Effect Podcast. I'm Rick Thompson.
I'm Caleb Ochs.
Caleb, we wanted to talk today about some things that you've been experiencing because of some capacity pinches we've had. You've been helping by doing some development work, which you did for years, but you've sort of been out of that role for a bit, but you're back in it right now and experiencing some interesting things. One we were just talking about was some of the problems that come from trying to augment your transactional system data using things like Excel files to try to be able to do certain things in reporting, and actually it can make things worse. Anyway, why don't you tell us about that?
Yeah, for sure. So, I think that was a good summary of kind of the problem, right? You're pulling data out of your transactional system, and then you're ultimately reporting on it. But in some cases, maybe a good example might be you want to group certain data by a category that is not in your transactional system, right? So a simple example might be your customer list, and you want to put them into regions, and regions are not defined in your transactional system, so you manually map them to a region in Excel, and then you use that Excel file to give yourself a new category in your reporting out of a tool like Power BI.
All right, so I'll just play straight man here. That sounds reasonable. Why don't you
right?
do that?
Yeah. And I think that's a reasonable reaction in a lot of cases, and why this can become a problem is it seems very straightforward and simple to do, and why think about it further than that? But some of the problems that come with it, and one of the biggest ones is when you're trying to match the numbers that are coming out of your system or out of your reports back to the numbers that come out of your system, it makes that a lot more challenging, right? So on a small system scale and small data scale, it's probably not that big of a problem. But when you're talking about, let's say you've got 100 million records and you've got, 50,000 customers, and you've categorized them into regions, and your system will not allow you to do just a total sales over the last year report because it's too much data for it to handle.
Okay.
Then you have to somehow slice and dice that data down to be able to match back to your Power BI report in your transactional system. So what I mean by that is, let's say you've got a sales report in your transactional system. You can run it by customer category. Let's say that's defined in your system. So you run one customer category and you get all of sales for 2023, and then you're trying to match back to Power BI all of sales for 2023, but now you've got regions over here and you don't have your category in there because category I wasn't actually that helpful, but that's the only way you can slice and dice data out of your system to actually pull the amount of data you need to pull.
Okay.
It may be a little bit confusing, but you're just looking at different things, different slices of the data, and how do you match that
apples
back?
and oranges, yeah.
Right, exactly.
Well, I would imagine there's other problems too. So, if you're trying to, let's say you're trying to deal with regions in your Excel sheet, and you have some kind of change, I don't know, a customer moves between regions or something. How are you dealing with that in your Excel sheet?
Yeah, that's a really good point, right? Someone's got to maintain that thing. The other thing that can come up quite commonly is you get a new customer. You got to make sure someone's adding that customer to your mapping file, right?
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Well, you have 50,000 customers. Who know?
Right. Yeah, and that's a good example because let's say you've got one customer, in one region, and then you have a very similar customer, or it's actually the same customer,
name,
but maybe it's a different customer ID,
right? And
they should be in the same region, but you add them and you put them in a different region. Now you're super inconsistent, and it just can turn into a real cluster.
And you're having to maybe even pull IDs out of the transactional system and put them in the spreadsheet. All right, so I'm guessing you ran into that recently.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
What did you guys do about it?
Well, we're still in the middle of it, but we're trying to put processes in place and change the data in the source system to a place that will work for what the reporting needs are.
Okay.
It's going to be not a small lift to change those categories and stuff inside of the transactional system because there's other implications. But that's ultimately what you have to do. So the best case scenario would have been to never do that in the first place because now you've got a bunch of reports that have all these different categories and are kind of running on this logic that was defined outside of the source system. And first of all, it's been a huge pain to, like I said, match back to that source because it's like hidden. The logic is like hidden behind the scenes in all this code of how these services are getting categorized. It's just a huge pain. So you really need to go back to the source and say, okay, if we were going to define this stuff only with this data, what would that look like, right? And that's the exercise that we're going through right now. But,
okay. And you have to do that, first of all, just to deal with the problems that we were talking about, sort of with data quality, but also to scale into the future. You're just going to need, I mean, you're not going to be able to keep up with that. And I bet if once you start going down that path, it's easy to say, we'll just do another thing in here too. Maybe we can, and then you just sort of make the problem exponentially worse potentially.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly right. I mean, the golden rule is like, whatever you can do in your source system, do that. It might seem like a daunting task, like update things in there, but do it. It's going to save you time in the long run, right?
Yeah.
I mean, putting that Excel stuff, you're right. I mean, once it's a slippery slope. You
Once
start
it's
going,
there,
and you're just like, okay, we can just do this way, and we can do that this way, and then you're 2 years down the road, the people that built it have left or got promoted, or they don't own it anymore, and now nobody really knows how it works, and or it's not really being managed very well, and now your reports are all wrong, and nobody likes those reports anymore because they seem to be wrong every time, and just skip all that.
What if you truly do have a situation that you can't resolve in the transactional system? Is your advice like, okay, live without it or get a different transactional system, or is there some better way that you can do it than Excel?
Yeah, I mean, there are better ways. The way that I've seen it done well before is you have some sort of write-back functionality in Power BI that can work well. There's a bunch of write-back tools, and this is probably a whole nother topic, but really the only solution that I've seen work decently well is an embedded Power App in your Power BI report. And then it's just a simple mapping exercise. So your Power BI is still displaying your information, and you're clicking a record and typing the information in, and then the Power App sending it back to a behind-the-scenes table. So it's kind of like it keeps everything in almost like it's in your transactional system anyway. It's just, gives you another UI to interface with.
It's almost an extension of the transactional app in that the Power App is going to hopefully do things to make sure it doesn't let you put in bad data or screw up on the key or primary key or something.
Yeah, well, it lets you not have duplication because, you're feeding the information instead of, free form entering it in Excel. It reduces that like Excel versioning problem.
Yeah.
One person's working off one version, the other person's working on the other. Like, there's a lot of benefits to doing it that way other than Excel. So do that if you can, if you have to, right?
Bottom line, don't use Excel to drive data behind reports if you can possibly. Well, definitely don't use it combined with a transactional system in some way that it's fragile. Do it in the transactional system if at all possible. If not, you need to actually do some coding where you're requiring people to enter things correctly and enforcing certain data rules and so on.
Yeah, exactly.
Got it.
Right.
Oh, sounds fun.
It just save you some headache, that's for sure.
Hope you're through that soon.
Yeah, we'll see.
All right. We'll talk again soon.
All right. See ya.